Hey guys, Anthony, 4x4 Diesel. This is probably going to be a short one. Now I'll just add in there that if it's short, then it's probably just short, and if it's long, it's probably long, and if it goes on for long, you got to watch and listen, mainly listen, because there's lots of information included. So if it goes for long, there's a reason for it. Okay, so this one is mainly around tie rod ends and inner tie rod ends, rack ends, whatever you want to call it. A few things we're going to look at here in this picture, but not much really. What we're talking about here is when you're servicing, looking after your Prado, the things you need to replace and the things that are going to come up and when they're going to come up. Now we've covered most of it in other videos. I think if you search what to look for when buying a Prado or servicing a Prado, things like that on our channel. Look, I'm not sure, it's mixed around. It's in our groups on Facebook as well, so you've got to search around. And also, of course, the VIP group's got some other extra stuff as well. But you can only get in there once you're a client. Clients only, of course. It's a VIP special, loyalty group. Now, I just want to point out a few things. Mainly, the Prado. We'll talk about the Prado. I mean, other vehicles are very similar, particularly Toyotas. Now, if we go into other brands, you're going to be doing a lot more work, probably a lot sooner. As I said, the Prados, the Toyota, the quality and engineering, it is really good, and the parts just last. But what I'm going to point out, sometimes it makes them look bad by, saying, oh, this is what you need, this is what's going to come up, whatever. No, not really. You can just drive the thing into the ground. I see these at, 400 odd thousand Ks. And, sometimes everything's pretty good, and sometimes even a bit lower Ks and things are falling apart. Now, a lot of it's got to do with how you look after the vehicle, and that's a pretty open word, how you look after it. It's not just as in I wash the car every weekend. It's everything under service-wise. It's not just service, what you've done, changing oils and stuff. When I say how you look after the car, it's how you use it as well, right? Now, obviously, they're four-wheel drives. We're going to use them on outback tracks. They're going to get a bit of harsh treatment, but how you look after it is kind of a bit like what suspension you choose to put in, what tyres, what tyre pressures you choose to run, when you let them down and how much, and driving at the right speed obviously for the conditions. So depending how they're used as to what we find, but I'm going to give you some information and tips here based on averages. Now, rack ends and tie rod ends on these cars are either not a problem at all or a very small problem, but I'll try and explain. So looking at the front end of things, talking about wheel bearings, because they're, just over inside here. Basically, if you're just using the car to go to the shops and back, school and back around town, you're not really going too far, you don't need to replace the front wheel bearings at all. Okay, you just check it at each service. If you get a noise, as we've described in other videos about the wheel bearings and stuff, or you get playing them, by checking with the wheel on, play like this, then you need to replace them, of course, right? And we supply those assembled, the front wheel bearings for the Prados, all assembled, ready to go. DIY bolt-on, no headaches, right? Genuine parts only, which obviously cost a bit more than Chinese rubbish that we've had problems with and heard all about it from other people telling me, yeah, you're right, just use genuine. Well, it's not about being right, it's just what it is. I've said quality components, okay? So if you're traveling remotely, you do want to replace those wheel bearings approximately every 200,000 Ks, the front wheel bearing assembly, right? Both sides, right? That's for your reliability. They can go bad fast. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. This is meant to be called tie rod ends. But after the wheel bearings, the point is probably after the wheel bearings, now I just want to point out with this tie rod end, see the grease around it, it doesn't matter, right? It was a little bit messy already, and obviously because we've taken it off, a little bit can come out. That boot's kind of packed with grease. If you see that, don't worry about it. Give it a good wipe, give it a clean. You're not really going to see much. You'll see a sweat coming out of things because movement and whatever, that's what happens. A little bit of greasy, oily, the dirt's in there, and it gets like that. So you just need to give it a degrease every now and then, right? If the boot's been damaged, split, or whatever, they don't just split from deterioration, these things. That's what I'm telling you. These components are awesome. That's why you just use genuine, okay? Now, if it's been damaged by someone and it's split and it's leaking out, different story. They're probably going to last forever anyway because it's a Toyota component, but you'd probably want to replace them. These are not that expensive, these tie rod ends, okay? Now, I just want to point out, see how the joint, it's quite tight to move like that? That would indicate that all the ball and everything's tight and there's no play. I don't think I should never say never, but I'm going to say it like this. I don't think I've ever seen a faulty one of these in any play in that whatsoever. The only time they get replaced is if we've found the inner ones that need replacing. We do the whole lot. We do the inner, we do the boot. We don't do the rod here, you know, unless it's damaged. So we do the whole lot, the inner and the outer and the boot and clamps and everything, right? Now, what I want to point out is this car's done, I don't know, about 150,000 Ks, and see how the arm's sitting up there of its own weight? That's already telling us this inner ball joint is also in really good condition. And I'll just point out this vehicle doesn't really go off-road, okay? So hint, hint, how you use the vehicle. So if you're on-road, these are things that aren't gonna come up, right? If you're off-road, they are gonna come up. The more you use it, the harder you use it, the more often it's gonna come up. Now I'll just show you, I'm just gonna move it a little bit. See how now it drops, right? Now that's okay. So what you do, it's easy checked with a wheel on. You don't have to pull it apart and do this. I'm just showing you while we've got one apart. If you sort of hold it by that shaft and pull back and forward, you can't see what I'm doing, but it's a, you know, sort of pulling like this, you'll feel if there's play there. But if you've got one that stands up on its own like that at any point, and you can feel the resistance there, it's still in really good condition. Now what we'll do in a minute, we'll go over the other side and have a look at that one and check it, just to show you we've got a couple that have been checked. And what we'll try and do is, when we've got another vehicle in with some bad ones, we'll try and do another video and show you what they look like. Now, what I'm trying to point out is though, this doesn't mean, oh no, you know, I've got to do this now. What this means is, it's probably, I don't know, 1 in 100, or it just, again, depends how you use the vehicle, okay? Now, if you're using it for outback travel, you're hammering the vehicle, you can expect to need to spend a bit more money. Now, symptoms of these inner, so the outers, we've got it covered, we don't have any issues there. The only time you got issues there is if someone hits it with a hammer or something. Well, yeah, and you do need to hit things with hammers to release them, to spread it, to pop the tool to pop the ball joint doesn't usually work or always work on these, depends what tool you've got and how many times you've used it. But the old school way is you don't hit this at all whatsoever. You hit the material that this goes into, give it a good tap and it'll pop out. But if you miss and hit the boot, you've damaged it, and that's when you need to replace it. So we've got that covered, no problems at this end, it's all inside there. Now just to give you some tips, we're not changing these. They're pretty straightforward to change. You know, if you just turn your steering, not necessarily full lock, but as far as you have to bring your steering rack, so, you know, rack and pinion, right? So the shaft will come out this way. This inner joint, basically, it just goes like a bolt that screws in to the end of the shaft and the rack. So basically, you've just got to, but you would take this off, you know, count your turns, take the clips off, take the boot. The hardest part is getting that inner clip on. See, it's in here. That's the hard part, right? So don't go into this thinking, oh yeah, this is going to be easy. I'll do this in an hour. You could be there for an hour or 2 hours just trying to get one clip on, depending what your skills are like and what tools you've got. It's obviously best done with a rack out on the bench, but that's a whole nother job, isn't it? So if you're going to do that, you might as well just change the whole rack. So this is kind of the easier way out of it, because the rack will be fine. Again, you know, they're not Holdens and Fords. Sorry guys, but you know, they're the sort of cars that, you know, things are falling apart and need to be changed all the time. Toyotas generally doesn't happen. You know, big numbers, but it doesn't happen. So that means quality. So get on with it, they say, get on with it. So, yep, what am I trying to say? That's how to change it, whatever. You know, but it's the inner one, right? If you want to check it with a wheel on, you grab the wheel left and right, so 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock, and you just give it a gentle wiggle like that, and you'll probably feel. And if you want to confirm, just grab the rod while you do it at this side on the tie and the rod, and you just feel it in that inner joint if you've got a bit of play there. Now, the symptoms you're going to have before you check it, if you notice your tyres are wearing. So, again, general thing, but Toyotas don't wear tyres, mate. 150 Prado, for example, quality vehicle, alignment good out of factory, they just don't wear tyres. Now, if the tyres wear, you're going around corners too fast, is one thing. That's the main thing, or someone's done a wheel alignment and mucked it up, or you've got worn components. And one of the biggest ones that's going to change your tyre wear is this inner rack end, because effectively your tie rod end's moving in and out because it's got play there. And you know, if you've got a millimetre of wear, you know, that's sort of maybe a bit more at the tyre, if you know what I mean. So you just need to be aware of it, and it won't drive as well either. When you're driving along, you know, there's sort of ruts on the bitumen, you know, from the trucks and whatever, the traffic where it goes on some roads, or you've got a camber. If you've got a car that pulls around a lot in the camber, that's probably because it could be having a bit of play here and the wheel's just moving around, you know, leaning with whichever way the road is, if you know what I mean. So this is one component. There's also other components like these lower control arm bushes. We've talked about those in other videos. Up here they are. Again, I wouldn't change them as prevention really. You can expect to need to change those lower arms or bushes, whatever you choose to do. That'll be in other videos, and it's in other videos. There'll be more coming. That you can expect that more over 200,000, probably either side of 300,000 usually, and same with the drive shafts. We don't see issues with those. That being said, I'm just looking there. It's just a bit of grease that's got in there and made it look. But we don't see issues with these boots and drive shafts. But again, if you're doing any major works over the 300,000 mark, in the area, it might be worth replacing them as prevention if you're an outback traveller, remote places, that sort of thing, okay? But certainly not necessarily. It's not a have to do, right? So those bushes at the lower arms here, it's a matter of checking for splits. We've got a video on that, just search it on our channel. Prado, lower control arm, or LCA, whatever. Let's go to the other side and have a look at the other one, see what that's like. Okay, so over this side, you can see the same deal. So it's standing up on its own. So there's enough resistance there. Right, we can crack it loose though, so there's not a problem there. Don't be the guy sitting there going, oh no, that's too tight, there's a problem, it's binding and you need to replace it. No, it's not that. That's how they come out of the factory, nice and tight, and they pretty well, a new car will pretty well just sit there like that, okay? And that's what you want. But, so this shows these ones haven't got wear. I don't need to, check for play like that. It's not going to be there because I know. So that, yeah, basically checks. If you're doing your suspension and you want to go like that, yep, that feels pretty tight. Happy days. If it's just flops down, don't worry about that either. That does show that it's got some wear in it, and you just need to sort of have a bit of a feel. Make sure there's no play there because, as I said, it'll drive average and it'll wear your tyres, okay? 3 things with wheel alignment: towing, camber and caster. Generally, camber and caster don't wear your tyres. Over a long period, they might wear the tyres on a tape. It'd have to be out a long way, like the old Datsun 1600, the rear, or of course the VT Commodores at the rear with that independent suspension. They were absolute shockers, especially with a V8 because it'd bog down even more on the inside of the back tyres. 10,000 Ks, see you later. So don't get me wrong, it can, but generally what wears tyres is people driving too fast. Notice it's always the left-hand front, because you're going around roundabouts, you're going around right corners. The other thing is, because you're at the right side of the vehicle, you feel safer by turning right-hand corners faster, which puts more wear on the left tyre. Now, when you're turning left, because you're on the danger side, on the right-hand side of the vehicle, generally you go slower. Like coming out of those slip lanes, you should be giving way, and please make sure you give way properly on the road because people just don't do it. So safety tip while we're at it, please give way. Look, give way. What does give way mean? It doesn't mean check and make sure they can hit the brakes in time to not hit you. What it means is don't interrupt their flow. So whatever you do shouldn't interrupt what they're doing, okay? That means if they've got to hit the brakes or slow down or change lanes, you didn't give way. So please give way. And I'm sure all you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. So I don't know, tell your friends or something because it's terrible. Anyway, back on topic. Tie rod ends here are good. That's how to check them. When are you going to replace them? Well, I reckon 300,000 or 400,000 Ks. If you do a lot off-road, it might be 200,000 Ks. So just check them. It's very rare, but every now and then we feel them like this, and they've got a bit of play in there. They'll wear your tyres. It'll drive terrible. Wheel alignment. Towing, what I'm trying to say is the towing is what wears your tyres really. If the towing's out because you're driving down the road exaggerated, instead of having your wheels straight like that, they're like that or like that. They're not like that or like that, believe it or not. They're either like that or like that, because whatever happens, it evens out to keep the car driving straight. And that doesn't change where your steering wheel is either. Well, it does. If they're both like that, well, I'll come back to like that and your steering wheel will go like that or like that. Get what I mean? It's pretty confusing, isn't it? What causes a car to pull left and right is totally different to the steering wheel being straight. So your steering wheel can be like that and it can be pulling right, or it can be pulling left, right? What causes it to pull? That's all in your camber and caster. It's got to be even to have it not pull, okay? The towing will sort itself out, right? You can't have a car that drives down the road like that. It doesn't happen, right? So it doesn't matter how it's set up. All that matters is the total tow in or tow out, whatever the case may be. You want tow in generally, a little bit of tow in, not much, because quality vehicles. Older vehicles, they're all sloppy like that, so they gave it a lot of tow in, because as you drove, the pressure pushing the tyres backwards, the resistance made it neutral. You want neutral tow in really. So most cars are going to have a slight tow in so that it's neutral. You don't want tow out. It's going to wear the inside of your tyres, so you're driving down the road like that. So what I'm pointing that out for, because if you've got a worn tyre rod end, it affects your tow in. It's constantly changing. The tow is going to, if it on the machine sitting there, the wheel alignment's right, when you drive, you're going to have toe out. Okay, so not cool. And then of course, if the road cambers to the left and you got toe out, the toe out's going to go to the left tire and your car's going to pull left, right? It's just going to drive terrible. I'm trying to point out, this is one of your reasons why on the Prado, because we don't see anything else here that's going to cause any issues, unless your lower control arm bushes are totally flogged out, then that can allow the whole bottom arm, right, which as we said, that affects the camber, the caster, and the towing, the whole lot, right? So if you've got a problem with how the vehicle's driving, check out these bushes. They do split. Generally, the back ones split worse. So lower control arm, we're not talking about the top one. We don't see any issues with those. So it's the bottom one. They split, and they can be split and still have plenty of life left in them, okay? So don't go, oh, look, there's a split. Have a good look at them. Understand how much rubber's there, and if there's a split starting, monitor the situation. Once they get halfway, you need to start saving or think about changing them, sort of thing, or you probably need to start saving before they get halfway through. But we've seen them service after service with a split, say 1/4 or 1/3, and stays the same. And we've replaced them. And sometimes in some vehicles, again, depending how they get used, the splits start again pretty soon. But they get to a point and they just sort of slow down. So just be aware of that. I'm not saying jump in and replace your control arms. I would need to see them to make a call, but we'll do some more videos on those as we see vehicles with split lower bushes. This one, yeah, it went longer than I thought, didn't it? See, there you go. What is that, about another 15 minutes, whatever? Blah, blah, blah. Lots of information, guys. So there you go. Check for play. Inner rack ends, nothing wrong with these. Clean that up. Bang. We're just putting some suspension in this. We'll get it all back together. Once again, thanks for watching. I hope that was helpful and informative for you as always. And if you haven't already, subscribe and give us a thumbs up. Thanks for watching. See you guys.